Hey guys, Kyle, the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for One Piece episode 933. And okay, so of all things to talk about this week, the one thing I wasn't expecting in this episode or just expecting to say about this episode or just in general wasn't expecting at all is that honestly, without hesitation, I think this is probably one of the better, just on a technical level, one of the better handled episodes of One Piece in this arc, just within this arc so far. Because I went into this episode like thinking, okay, how good can this be? And like in this in this episode, the fight between Zoro and Kamazo the Manslayer turned out way better than I ever thought it would. Like it was just a few it was just the last couple minutes of the episode. But those last couple minutes turned turned out to have such an amazing art and animation quality to them that it was like that it's one of those moments that was epic enough in the manga, but with the art and animation quality that Toei put into just that one fight sequence alone, honestly not only made it an even more of a hype moment than it already was, but I dare say it's probably one of the best, again, one of the best, not only best moments in Wano so far, at least top five. And in some, and honestly, just in general, this episode as a whole was just, on a technical level, just amazing. Like, it was one of the better handled episodes, I think, of this, of this arc. I mean, don't get me wrong, the episode as a whole was great, but it was almost like the guys at Toei sat down in their meeting and said, okay, if nothing else, we have to make this one fight stand out as much as possible, and they delivered, and which I can only hope that the same level of quality that we got in this episode and with that particular fight, or hell, even just the type of quality we got in the Gyuki Maru and Zoro fight kind of continues on next week. And judging by the preview, it just might we pretty much just might get a similar level of quality to that in the next week's episode too. Which, yeah, I'm really hyped for it because it seems like Toei with it seems that Toei is finally kind of like is coming back with a force now. Like I'm not saying that they didn't, but ever since COVID-19, the first couple episodes definitely had that vibe that they were getting settled back in. But this episode, it really had that vibe. Like, okay, they're settled back in, and they're going ham now. Um, it was, and for me, it's one of those things where, and part of honestly what made that last couple of that last couple of minutes so impactful for me too, though, is that while it was handled brilliantly on a technical level, as a manga reader, there's a very real level of tragedy that shines through with Prince Kamazo's character. If you know who he is, what happened to him, and what happened to him, because from knowing those two elements alone, it just further builds on what makes Orochi honestly one of the more infuriating villains of the series. Like, I'm not gonna say he's one of the more powerful, but he's definitely one of the more infuriating. In fact, there's actually something like revisiting the anime. There's something I've actually discovered about Orochi as a villain, but I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna save it for the right time to talk about it. But let's just say he kind of fixes a problem with another portly minor villain I have. Um, One little detail I also love, but forgot if it was in the manga or not, is how just Zoro just tossing off his Haori from his kimono was basically the bandana moment in this arc. Like the moment he tossed that thing off, you knew he was serious. Just like it's just the same. Like every time he puts on his bandana, you know the dude is going in ham. So just him seeing take off his Haori, that was also his bandana when I was saying, oh shit, he tossed off the Haori. We need to prepare for some epic shit. Like it's just the epicness in this chapter was just the epicness in this chapter just with all the little details was just great. It was a great time to watch to watch One Piece, honestly. Um, with all that said, though, moving away from the Kamazo fight, there's a very interesting dynamic that's shown in Zoro's battle with Gyukimaru, because Zoro tries to tell Gyukimaru the truth of how he obtained Shusui, but Gyukimaru just doesn't believe a single word of it, which is kind of interesting in the sense where it further exposes the problem of just how much Wano being closed off from the rest of the world has affected the worldview of those that live there. And for someone like Yukimaru, who sworn to protect the gravestones, grave sites, and treasures of Wano, it probably is the biggest hit to his pride, while at the same time, like, for as ridiculous as these myths and legends of Ryuma might sound, they do serve the story of by showing us just how influential he was. He was to Wano, and how his legacy is formed around the basis of, oddly enough, being Wano's ultimate. That where even in death, he is basically Wano's ultimate protector, and it's really one of those times where, for as much as we may want to see Zoro pretty much Shusui back, Yukimaru's argument does is pretty much sympathetic enough that to really kind of make Zoro out to be the villain in this situation, which of course in some ways is very fitting since he's a pirate, but it's one of those things where it's a little hard to sympathize with Zoro's side of the argument in this case because of, well, pretty much because of the way that Yukimaru lays it out. Like, again, both Shusui and and just Shusui and Ryuma are basically are protecting figures to the people of Wano. And for as much as we want to argue that the people of Wano pretty much need to move away from being dependent on these icons, at the same time, you can't help but kind of have, in the times they're living in, they can't help but kind of need these protecting icons right now. Um, but yeah, in overall, it is kind of a little difficult to sympathize with Zoro, unfortunately. But it is, it's one of those where, yeah, as for as much as we may want Zoro to get his sword back, it's he is kind of coming off as a bit more of a douchebag here. Um, and and honestly, it is very interesting to note how the fight with Kyukimaru does kind of very easily segue into how Zoro is going to get a new sword. Let's put it that way. It's very interesting to see, like, the breadcrumbs being laid out for, like, that how much Zoro, like, the replacement sword Zoro is going to get. It's very interesting in that sense. Um, and yeah, if I did have to nitpick with this episode, though, I will admit the parts that felt the most fillery, honestly, even in the manga, was the bits with the sumo tournament. But it, I'll be fair here and say it did offer up just a little bit more reinforcement of just how important it was that Luffy learns this hockey wave technique. Because if he couldn't land a dent on Kaido with regular arm and hockey, then there really is no point in fighting him again, unless he learns this technique. While at the same time giving us context on Queen's more than obvious plan with this tournament. And yeah, what can I say more about how short-sighted this plan is that I haven't already said? I mean, other than the fact that it really only serves to help Luffy at minimum. It serves to help Luffy, and at minimum, the only good thing that we got to see are Batman and Gazelle Man again. But really, Luffy said it best. They're perfect sparring partners. Like that is honestly is the one flaw. This is partially the one flaw I have with Wano as a whole, is that thing with this whole thing in the in the prison mine, it really only serves two purposes, which is to pretty much get which is to develop Luffy and help him get stronger, and B, in order to gain allies, which you're gonna see later. But yeah, that is really the only two purposes this sequence serves, and it is like I guess one of the weaker parts of the series, but it is definitely one of the weaker. Yeah, it is just overall just one of the weaker elements of this arc in general. So, yeah, I mean, I don't hate it, but it just kind of it serves a very niche and specific purpose. That's what I'm getting at. Um, but yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Crunchyroll. Death Note of me, signing off. Later, guys.